How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.
is the end. There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final genocide. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final I don't wanna get married. I don't wanna be just like you. Nobody bothered to ask me. They said I ought to be just like you. Well, I could get a marriage license for a husband and me, so I could use it as insurance for my HART. Since I can file taxi with the same gender spouse, I shouldn't feel so bad getting kicked out of my house. Don't send me a rainbow. Your uncle's never done shit for me. Don't wanna sit at your table. A fucking invitation to your party. Wanna celebrate a game on your cable TV? Well, trans lesbians are calling southern bodies stuff to eat. You paid the world for tea up the shotguns and dick. Well, all the kids on the street are getting belted with whips. I don't wanna be equal, 'cause I know I'm fucking better than you. Your moderation is lethal. Get on my way, let me do what I need to. There's no protection that this nation's thinking offered to me. Just solid Francis do this is my gay bourgeoisie. So fuck off with your evil South American flag. The only colors that I need are the pink and the black.
What up, everyone? Hey, guess what? Guess what? Guess what? I have decided that even though Pride Month basically got canceled because of protesting and rioting and deportation stuff and now World War III in Israel and Iran. But then did you guys like, by the way, did everyone like that there was a ceasefire yesterday and then it was immediately broken? Almost like, who could have seen that coming? But anyway, Queer Marxism Month. This was my month. I had been so excited about June. We were going to watch Queer Marxism all June, and then everyone else conspired to destroy my plans. And we have been now distracted for weeks from Queer Marxism Month. And so I decided today, even though World War III is back on, after it was off for like 3 hours, and then Israel just couldn't help themselves, and Israel's like, you know what? Just because we signed a ceasefire doesn't mean we can't drop a metric ton of bombs on Iran and assassinate one of their leaders. And then Iran retaliated, which would have been predictable by any normal person. You know, we got sidetracked just because Israel is still... And you know what? The last thing I'll say about it. Did anyone enjoy seeing Trump say, yeah, I'm mad at Iran, but Israel can fuck right off because they shouldn't have done that shit? Oh, it was glorious. It was glorious. It was glorious for Trump to have that realization. It was like all of the influencers on Twitter yesterday who were ragging on the anti-war people, saying that you guys just abandoned Trump and Trump fixed everything. And then literally within hours, exactly what we all said was going to happen happened. It was completely fucking predictable. Everyone knew what was going to happen, except apparently for the paid off conservative shills who were so surprised when all of a sudden, oh my God, the epic Trump ceasefire fell apart. Anyway, I can rant about this all day, but don't think I'm not feeling a little personally satisfied. Not that I want there to be war. Of course, I don't want there to be war. Of course, I would have loved it if the ceasefire held. But oh, yo, and the stuff they're doing in Thomas Massey, bro, that's shameful. Hang on one sec. It is shameful what they are doing to Thomas Massey. If Trump was doing nothing else and he was still being that much of a dick to Thomas Massey, I'd be like, that would be enough reason for me to never take them seriously again. Thomas Massey is one of the only people in Washington, D.C. with actual principles. It's gross. It's so gross. And honestly, fuck off to Angela McArdle of the Libertarian Party, who swore up and down Trump was the first Libertarian president, according to Angela McArdle and Dave Smith in the Libertarian Party. And then, really well done, guys. Well done. Well done. Didn't listen to anyone. Well done. Anyway, separately from World War III happening, I want my Queer Marxism Month back. All right. I want to watch some Queer Marxism. And so I went and found us some Queer Marxism to watch. And I personally think it's going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be pretty good myself, because this is from one of our favorite socialist bookstores. It is from Firestorm Books. Firestorm Books is a radical revolutionary bookstore in, I believe, Asheville, North Carolina. So, North Carolina, red state. But they've got a giant radical revolutionary socialist bookstore right in the middle of it. And what's so great about Firestorm Books is they do live events that they stream on their YouTube channel. They have Zoom calls that they stream on their YouTube channel, stuff like that. So we actually get to hear from the authors that are writing the books that are being sold in the socialist bookstore. And they get to tell us what they think. And so this is like being a fly on the wall of a real queer Marxist book club event. Let me go ahead and get the chat on the screen so you guys can see your chats. And the presentation, which is less than a year old, not a year, excuse me. What am I saying? A year. This presentation is less than a week old. This presentation was 1 week ago. So it's brand new, hot off the presses. No one's ever seen it before. Chestfeeding for queer and trans parents. I'm sorry, what? I mean, we all know what that is, right? We all know what it is, technically speaking. Visiting author Jacob is joined in conversation by postpartum doula Corey. I wonder if Corey is also an abortion doula. Sometimes they're both. To discuss his new book, A Guide for Queer and Trans Parents Who Are Often Left Out of Literature on Chest Feeding and Lactation. So do we think Jacob is a trans man then? Jacob, the trans man, wrote a book about chest feeding for queer and trans parents. Together, they explore the present health climate for trans folks, how providers can better serve queer communities, and the science behind induced lactation, and much more. I don't know. I don't think this presentation is just going to be relevant for people who may or may not be chest feeding. I think we might I think there might be some juicy nuggets and tidbits in this presentation. Oh, you don't know about the abortion doulas? Hang on. Do you know where you can go to find out about the abortion doulas? Head over to my Substack. That is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. And just search for, you guessed it, abortion doulas. And you will find out when I discovered that abortion doulas was a thing. I will put this link in the chat. Because this is when I went undercover at a far-left reproductive justice conference. And I went on a whole self-managed abortion tour. And in the self-managed abortion tour, I learned about, wait for it, the abortion doula. This sign right here says, an abortion doula for everyone having an abortion. And what abortion doulas do is they sit on a stool next to the toilet, and as the pregnant person, I want to be very careful not to gender. We don't misgender on this channel. As the pregnant person is bleeding they them's unborn child into the toilet, which I'm told involves a lot of blood and sometimes a body part. As they are bleeding out the child, the abortion doula sits on the stool and holds their hand and makes sure they have a nice cup of tea and takes care of everything they need as they're doing their self-managed at-home bathroom abortion. And I'm not making any of that up. I might be being a little hyperbolic, but this is actually a thing. Like, this is a thing on the left. And if you don't believe me, then just Google abortion doula and see what comes up. And I promise you are going to get some responses for that. So that is what an abortion doula is. And sometimes on the left, when a woman is a birthing doula of some sort, they are all also oftentimes an abortion doula as well, because why not do both? Why not do both? Why not? Why not? Why not? Anyway, so hopefully we find that out. I really wish I had been there live, because I definitely would have asked her if she's also an abortion doula and what that is about. We also, by the way, have heard them talk about abortion doulas from the Socialism Conference last year. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, like we gotta get back into reproductive justice at some point. Reproductive justice is so insane, but it's also so toxic. Yeah, I think I talked about that at PorkFest. I think I did. Yeah, that sounds like something I would have said. Anyway, so this is what we're going to be watching on the channel today. I hope you guys are all ready for it, and you're ready to learn about how to be the very best chest feeders for queer parents that you can be. And it's going to be great. And this is what we're going to listen to, and it's going to be awesome. And I don't know. So before we get into that, guys, just as a reminder, my job is literally to spend time on the internet researching and documenting the radical revolutionary far left. That is my job because you guys allow me to do it. I am completely 100% funded by people just like you who are sick and tired of being lied to by conservative shillmongers about what is going on the left. And all you want to do is see the left for yourself and see what's going on and listen to what they have to say and learn about them. And if you just want the truth, I will show you the truth. And I do it better than anyone else on the internet because I now know where to find all this leftist content because I have been doing this for years and years and years. And so if you want insight that no one else is getting about the radical revolutionary far left in America, the people who are causing all the problems that we have to deal with every day, make sure, of course, you are subscribed to my Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can subscribe for free, but I highly encourage everyone, if you are in a position to financially support my work, please consider doing so. I can't do this without you guys. I don't have any big political donors. I only have average people that are interested in the truth. And listen, I will always provide you the full receipts in context, nothing cut out of context, so that you can look at the information for yourself and decide what you think about it. And maybe you agree with me and maybe you disagree with me. And either way is fine, because my only job is to show up and to tell you the truth. I am not pushing any sort of narrative. I am not pushing any sort of agenda. I hate both tribes. I don't like anyone. I didn't vote for anyone. So if that sounds like the type of stuff you're looking for, please consider supporting my work on the Substack. $8 a month, $80 a year. I would really appreciate it. Now, we have a little community building activity that we're going to do. Is everyone ready to take part in a community building activity before we get started? The community building activity involves Weinstein. Hang on. I heard a video you guys couldn't hear. The community building activity that we are about to engage in involves Bret Weinstein. Now, I don't have any beef with Bret Weinstein. I don't feel any sort of way about him. I have never spoken to the man. I don't have anything against him. I do not want anyone harassing him. I do not want anyone being rude to him. We are going to be very, very polite and very, very nice and kind in what we are about to do. And don't do anything that would reflect badly on me, because I will be pissed off, okay? We don't have internet. We are not hooligans. We might be the bad news bears of the internet, but we are not hooligans, okay? So we're going to be nice and polite and kind. However, I think that it is time for Bret Weinstein to talk to me. And the reason I think that is, the other day, in case you missed it, I watched Bret's intervention with James Lindsay, where James just made stuff up for an hour and a half that had no basis in reality at all. And Bret just let him off the hook over and over and over again. He was incredibly kind and empathetic and understanding. He tried to talk sternly to James at the end, but I really think that maybe Bret could have been a little harsher on James, because the thing of it is, listen, I don't want to go into the big backstory of all the bullshit that I've had to endure because of James Lindsay, but let's just say I documented it in this open letter to Bret Weinstein to include the times that James Lindsay has publicly demanded that my work be canceled, the times that James Lindsay has stolen my work, the times that James Lindsay for years went around telling people behind my back that I totally wanted to fuck him and I tried to seduce him when that never happened. When I then came out and proved that that never happened, I never flirted with him, I never said anything salacious to him, there was no evidence that this had ever happened. I showed our entire DM history for 3 years. There were no hearts, there were no smiley faces, there were no winky faces, there were no invitations for drinks. There was literally nothing. When I finally, after years of James spreading this lie about me, when I finally called him out on it and said, no, motherfucker, this never happened, you're making it up, James tweeted something out to the effect of, well, just because she never tried anything doesn't mean she didn't want to. And apparently James thinks he can mind read what's going on in my head because I made a joke to someone one time. And he thinks that because he can mind read what's going on in my head, even though I never did anything, that's license for him to lie about me and smear me for years. I have all the receipts for that. I have all the times that James has diagnosed me with a serious personality disorder for saying things he doesn't like on the internet. I have examples of things when James Lindsay is lying about me and again telling everyone that I wanted to totally fuck him. Pinky swear, trust him, bro. I have screenshots of all the times that James Lindsay has told his audience to block people in my community, like Reagan here. Reagan was trying to show James some primary source evidence about queer theory. James didn't like it, and so he told his 500,000 followers to block her because she was an obvious planted bot. Reagan is a real person, by the way. I have all this stuff in this open letter, but the point of this is not necessarily to complain about James Lindsay, which I have done ad nauseum. If you want receipts for anything that I just said, you can find it on the channel. I've documented all this. You can find it on the Substack. I just want to be very, very clear with what we're talking about. When Bret Weinstein does a whole podcast where he's really nice to James and he's like, James, I know people are being really mean to you on the internet and that must really suck for you. I kind of sat here watching it and I went, hang on a second. Do you know the shit that James has done to other people on the internet? And P.S., by the way, not only has James gone out of his way for years to try to discredit me so people don't look at what I'm actually doing, which is what we're going to be doing on this channel in a minute, I have the largest archive of leftist content on the fucking internet. You know, people make fun of me when I say this on Twitter. There was some guy earlier who responded on Twitter. He said, "Oh, Karlyn, you just think you're always above everyone and no one else has the information you have." And I'm like, can you name someone who has the information I have? One person. I put this challenge out there all the time. If anyone listening to this honestly believes that I do not have the largest archive of leftist content on the internet, that I don't have the largest primary source archive of their trainings, their documents, their propaganda, their zines, their classes, etc., etc. If you think that I really haven't gone undercover at leftist events as much as someone else, then name me a single fucking name. Just one name. Because I would actually really love to find people out there doing this stuff. I continue to be shocked and amazed all the time that I am the only one doing this. So if someone else is doing it and they're doing it better than me, I want to know about it. And if you can't name a single person that's doing it better than me, then shut the fuck up. Because I'm sick of hearing about it. Karlyn, you just think you're so special. Well, yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah, I do. Because for the last 4 years, I'm the only one that's been doing deep dives in the way I have been. In the last 4 years, I'm the only one archiving this information in the way I have been. In the last 4 years, I'm the only one teaching people about this information in a way that people actually are able to learn. And I could go on and on and on. My bona fides publicly on the internet for years should be unquestioned when it comes to the left. And yet, what I have to deal with over and over and over again is not being able to engage in intellectual conversations about this, which is what I actually in real life want to be doing. I hope people understand that. I don't give a flying fuck about James Lindsay. James isn't even talking about the left anymore. I would rather never talk about him again. What I do want is to be able to engage in intellectual conversation and dialogue about this content, and I can't find anyone to do it. Literally, I've tried. We have tried. And not even just me. People in my community, we have tried for years, literally years, to get people to take this seriously. We have tried for literally years to show people the primary source evidence, and they won't look at it. It is amazing. And people get confused about this. They come on the channel, they're like, Karlyn, why wouldn't they look at it? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Ask them. Why don't you ask them? Yeah, tell us who's doing this better than me. Let's all follow them on social media right now. But we will never get a name because they never have a name because there's no one else doing it. And it is so fucking annoying. And so none of this is Bret Weinstein's fault, by the way. I don't think Bret Weinstein has ever heard of me. But perhaps one of the reasons that Bret Weinstein and many other people like him have never heard of me and never heard of my work is I have been constantly for fucking years battling these endless smear campaigns that have been run on me by James Lindsay and his friends. And so pardon me if I am just a little bit personally triggered by the fact that I just watched Bret Weinstein totally softball James. James, I'm sure it's really hard that you got mean comments on the internet. You know what? He can take a fucking seat. Because James has dished it out far worse than he has ever taken it. And perhaps there's a reason James is getting mean comments on the internet, because I am not the only person that James has done this to. I'm just not going to fight other people's battles for them. I'm going to fight my battles. And when people are attacking me all the time and attacking my work and trying to discredit my work and telling people to block me and telling people to block my audience because we provide inconvenient evidence that completely debunks his narrative, but he's not engaging in an intellectually honest way, then I have to step back and say, does Bret Weinstein even give a fuck that James is being completely intellectually dishonest about this whole thing? But that's not the best conversation to have with Bret Weinstein. I don't want to sit down with Bret Weinstein and have a fucking conversation about James Lindsay. I instead would like Bret Weinstein to show us through his behaviors that he is an intellectually honest person that wants to have an intellectual conversation about the left. That's what I want. I want to be able to have an intellectual conversation about what Bret Weinstein has observed, what Bret Weinstein has experienced, how that overlaps with the research I've done, because I think there's a pretty direct link to the queer Marxist stuff that I've been doing that no one else has been doing, by the way, that Bret Weinstein has probably never heard of in the way that he thinks he's heard of it. And I think that those are the people that hit him in the face at Evergreen. And I think that could be a fascinating conversation. And just generally speaking, Bret Weinstein, I think, is actually smart enough to have this type of conversation. And I think he actually could have it in a really lovely way if he was inclined to do it. So again, I'm not trying to start any beef with Bret Weinstein. I'm really not. But based on his willingness to have a completely ridiculous intervention with James Lindsay because James is getting mean posts on Twitter and he's making up a narrative that he can't even back up with evidence, I have to say that if Bret Weinstein is as intellectually honest as he claims to be, and I think that he does generally see himself, I think he genuinely sees himself this way. I don't think this is a ruse. I think he genuinely sees himself as an intellectually honest person, if nothing else. And I might agree or disagree with some of his positions, but I do think that that's real. So if it's real, then I would like him to talk to me, and I would like to show him what we have on the far left, and I would like to get his feedback, and I would like to have a dialogue and an exchange of ideas. That is what I would like. And so I don't want people to harass him. I don't want people to call him names. Please, please, please do not bring up anything related to Jewish anything or Israel anything. We can have a conversation about Jewish power another day, all right? I don't hate Bret Weinstein because he's Jewish. I don't hate anyone because they're Jewish. I don't care about the race stuff. I don't really like this is not it is not the same thing. And because people have tried to do this today, they're trying to say, well, he's a Jew, Karlyn, so obviously he's not. I don't actually buy into that. I think that Bret Weinstein could actually make the decision to have a conversation if he wanted to. And I don't think his being Jewish has anything to do with it. And so I'm going to ask people to please refrain from engaging in that. And if that hurts your feelings, then I'm very sorry. But there is actually a bigger picture here that doesn't involve your feelings. If people would like to help me do this, I have posted a video and an open letter on my Substack, on my YouTube channel, and most importantly, because this is all people care about, on Twitter. And so it is pinned to the top of my feed right now on Twitter. You can see right here, it's the very first thing. It is pinned to the top of the chat on YouTube and Rumble. I will also put it in the chat again. If you are on Twitter, I would like you to do several things to this post. And this is going to help boost it in the algorithm. And we're going to be very nice. And we're not going to cause problems, and we're all going to be very polite. I need you to bookmark the post. I need you to heart the post. I need you to reply to the post. If you want to reply and tag Bret Weinstein, please ask him nicely and politely, and do not be rude to him. I want you to retweet the post, and I want you to quote tweet the post. And if you want to quote tweet the post and also, again, tag Bret Weinstein, please be polite. Do not spam him. Do not harass him. Just say it once. He's already been emailed this anyway. I just want him to get a sense that, I'm not the only one saying this. There are other people who would actually like this conversation. And it is critically important that we be nice and polite and not harass him and not call him names and not make this about Jewish anything, because it's not, because I don't want to give him any reason to say she is not acting in good faith. I am absolutely acting in good faith. I have a massive archive of information. I don't know how someone could be able to build what I have built without acting in good faith. This is what I do all day, every day. So there's no reason for him to say no to this, except if there is a petty personal reason or a political reason or a blacklisting reason, or he doesn't like that I'm friends with Nick Fuentes and he's not intellectually honest, so he won't actually talk to anyone just based on who they're friends with. Or he could just choose to ignore it entirely, which again, I think would be proof of his intellectual dishonesty. And we're just going to put it out there and we're going to be polite and we're going to allow him to do whatever he does. So if you want to help out with that, I would really appreciate it. And we'll see what happens. And maybe he will come back and say, yeah, let's schedule a conversation. That'd be pretty cool. Maybe he won't. Maybe I will never hear from this again. Maybe he will come back and say, you're a psycho bitch based on these smear campaigns that I've heard about you on the internet, and I don't want to, which of course would just reveal his intellectual dishonesty on a good day or his downright grifter, whatever, on the worst day. For some reason, I can't leave a like, so here's this. Hey, thanks, Ryan, for the super chat. Yeah, episode 420 is coming up. I don't know what I'm going to do for that. We got to come up with a plan. So that's what's going on with Bret Weinstein. Yet this is another great tip from Master Shake. I was looking through his X feed to see if I could find a relevant post to drop something in the comments. That might be another thing to do. But again, guys, I really don't want him to be spammed. Please no spam. Everything, no just spamming him with replies. Just if you're going to reply to stuff multiple times, make it relevant, make it polite, all that stuff. All right. All right. Well, let's get into the presentation. Who is ready to learn about chest feeding? It's going to be great. All right, guys, please mount the like button if you would be so kind. Mounting the like button lets YouTube know to recommend my content to more people. We are learning about chest feeding for queer and trans parents. This is from a radical revolutionary bookstore called Firestorm Books in Asheville, North Carolina. And let's get this party started.
Hi, folks. Welcome. My name's Liberty, and I'm part of the Firestorm Collective. We are a 17-year-old group of queer and trans folks who have been running this cooperatively owned and managed bookstore since it started out downtown. And we're really excited to have you here tonight for what I think will be a great conversation that also includes some folks who are joining remotely. So welcome to anyone who's tuning in from afar. We're really lucky today to have Jacob Engelsman with us to have a conversation about lactation, particularly with a focus on queer and trans parents, but also I'm sure with insights for lots of other groups of folks. Before we get started, I just want to point out that there is a bathroom over here if you need it at any point. There's a little hall and the light will come on as you step into it. If at any point in the evening you need to get up and stretch or step outside, there's an exit immediately behind you, which you can definitely use, even though there's a sign on it that says use the other door. Don't hesitate. Or you can go out the way you came in, get some fresh air, and then rejoin us. Let's see what else, any other housekeeping. I think that's probably good. Just want to suggest to both Jacob and Corey that once we get started, if there are questions from the audience,
that happens.
If you don't mind repeating them, because only what's spoken into the microphone will be heard by folks who are remote. So maybe a good thing to keep in mind. So before we go any further, I just want to introduce Jacob, the author of Lactation for the Rest of Us. Jacob Engelsman is an international board-certified lactation consultant, infant care specialist, speaker, and writer. His writing has appeared in Trans Bodies, Trans Selves, which you can find on our shelves, Clinical Lactation, and Everyday Birth Magazine. Jacob has spoken for the National Midwifery Institute, the United States Lactation Consultant Association, and the Association of Women's Health, Obstetric and Neonatal Nurses on topics including lactation support and supporting gender and sexual diversity in healthcare. And I think in this moment when healthcare is under attack all around us, particularly for queer and trans folks, conversations like these in spaces like this feel more important than ever. So thank you so much to Jacob, and also thank you so much to Corey Greystone for joining today. Corey is a local doula and lactation consultant who's going to bring in a little bit of that local perspective and guide us through the conversation. So thanks to you both.
I just want to see real quick, what is her name again? Corey Graywood. Okay, I'm going to look her up real quick.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to do a brief introduction of the book, or do you want me to just start with questions?
Yeah, why don't you just start with questions?
Okay.
Because I feel like, yeah, I'll probably cover all the
Most of them.
bases talking about the book. So
Yeah. Well, my first question is going to be what got you into the field of lactation, which I think will cover some of why you wrote the book.
Yeah, so I got into lactation pretty late. It's definitely a second career for me. And the short story is that when I was 15 years old, I got a job at a fast food restaurant and traveled around a lot. And if you can cook, you can get a job anywhere. So I just worked in food service until I was 30 because that's, what you do. My spouse has a very specific career plan. So yeah, so there was
Is there a who's who list of these radicals? Well, let me put it this way. We tried to make one. We tried. There's a lot of these people. And every time you find one, that one leads you to 17 more. And so I do have plans to try to do stuff like this in terms of like creating lists and stuff. We certainly have ones that we watch more often than others. So I do know like the major players, but in terms of like minor players, there are more of these people than anyone understands that there are. We're talking about like millions. I mean, like honestly, maybe not millions. Like truly, I don't even know anymore. I don't even know how many there are. That's the thing. It's like people think this is like a small band. Well, okay, you want to try? Okay, go ahead. You go ahead and try to make a list of every single radical socialist activist in the United States, where they work, what projects they're involved in, what ideas they're pushing, where they're speaking. You go ahead and try, and you report back to me how that goes for you. Okay, I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about it. It's going to be a really fun experience for you, and you let us know how that goes. Okay, there's a bajillion. More than you ever have expected.
there was a lot of moving around, and so I just would go from restaurant to restaurant. But then when we got
here, I'll even give you a head start. Hang on, I'll give you a head start. Give me 1 sec. You want a head start? I'll give you a place to start looking. This is the Socialism Conference website. The Socialism Conference is going to be a conference I will be covering. Is this next weekend? Holy shit. Is the Socialism Conference next weekend? It is. Okay. Not this Friday or this Thursday, but next Thursday. We are going to start covering the Socialism Conference. The Socialism Conference is over 4th of July weekend. So we are going to be doing an evening session on the 2nd. Wait, an evening session on the 3rd, all day on the 4th, and all day on the 5th. So we're doing a massive socialism weekend because they have a virtual streaming schedule, and their virtual streaming schedule actually looks pretty good. We're going to have a lot of great presentations to pick from to cover it, but the Socialism Conference goes on in person. And so here's what I would like you to do, or I'm going to challenge you to do. You want your first list of radical revolutionary socialists? Go to the Socialism Conference website. And I want you to go through and catalog every single name of every single speaker in every single presentation on the Socialism Conference website. Start there. And then once you catalog every single one of these names, and most of these panels have multiple people presenting at them, okay? Once you catalog every single one of their names, then find out what organizations are they associated with? Where do they work? Where do they do activism? Where have they done other speaking? And then go into those organizations and catalog all the names in all of those organizations. See, this is the full list. This is the full list of socialism conference presentations that are happening in Chicago in a week and a half. See, we're still going. All of these people across all these different sessions are different people. Okay? And every single one of those people is going to open you up to more people. And then where else can we go? Then another thing you can do on the Socialism Conference page is go to the list of endorsing organizations. So this is going to be a list of radical revolutionary socialist organizations that are endorsing or sponsoring the Socialism Conference. And then I want you to go to the website of every single one of these organizations and make a list of every single person involved in every single one of these organizations. Are we having fun yet? Are we having fun yet? This is one rabbit hole, what I'm showing you right now. This one project will produce a list of tens of thousands of people. This is like a giant fuck off family tree that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you want to know why I haven't been able to manage doing this yet, it's because we literally tried to do this. I literally started doing exactly what I just told you like 2 years ago. And it became so overwhelming of a project so quickly. And Reagan and Bach can testify to this. It was like, I just stopped doing it. I was like, it was too much. And so we retreated and the project is just sitting there. And it is something I would like to figure out how to do. And I do think with AI, I think will actually make this a lot easier for us. So if we can figure out a way to get AI to do this for us, I think that would be because I do want to have a giant database. I want to have a giant database of all the socialist organizations. I want to have them grouped by tier. I want to have a list of all the major activists that are, but it's just a giant fuck off project, and I don't have time for this. But I'm trying. If you want to take a stab at it, that's where you can get started. Have fun, go conquer, enjoy. Yeah, it's but it's not as like it is a valuable thing for us to have this information. And it's like if you just accept the fact that it is an overwhelming project, it gets a little bit easier. But oh yeah, Data Republican's going to save the day. Yeah, I'm sure that's realistic. Yeah, definitely. Anyway,
through grad school, and we like to say when they got their first big boy job, we decided that it was kind of like it's my turn to figure out what I really want to do, because I was done working in food service. I had worked in every conceivable genre of cooking and restaurant work, and I was done with that. And what I really wanted to do, I knew two things. I wanted to take care of babies, and I didn't want to go to med school, not trying to be a pediatrician. So I looked up I decided what my ideal job would be. I looked it up and learned that the word for that was postpartum doula. So we had just moved to Atlanta, and I Googled Atlanta doulas. I took a bunch of people out to lunch and took them out for coffee and had a bunch of chats. And I did a postpartum doula training. I later did a birth doula training. I realized that that's not really what I wanted to do, because what I like to tell people is that doulas, being a doula is more parent care than child care.
Yeah, 100%.
And I wanted to take care of babies. So I got a job at a lactation clinic in Atlanta called Breastfeed Atlanta, where I was working as the secretary. Basically, I was scheduling consultations, I was cleaning breast pump parts, and I was filing insurance claims. But I had my foot in the door of the local lactation birth work community, and was getting some.
No, the Mary Nardini gang was out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was all the queer Marxism militant queer activism came up in the Midwest.
Some jobs working as a nanny part-time. And after about 6 months of this, the owner of the clinic, Christy Corsi, was just like, you should just become a lactation consultant. Like, you're here all the time.
Is this
You've
guy
learned a
trans or
ton,
not?
You love the work.
That's weird if he's
Like,
not
you should
trans.
just fill it, like, get certified, do the stuff. And that's a whole process. It usually takes about like 3 years. It's like specific college courses, lactation specific education, and then a bunch of clinical hours. But again, I already worked in a clinic, and I didn't realize at the time actually that I was really lucky in that regard, because for a lot of people, the hard part is getting clinical hours, right?
Yeah.
Because unless you live in a city like Atlanta, then most towns have like 1 or 2 lactation clinics. So
And they can't mentor more than one person.
they can't mentor more than one person. And yeah, so it's a much more of a process to get your clinical hours for most people. So luckily, I kind of had clinical hours handed to me, which I am now extremely grateful for.
Yeah.
Which at the time I really just took for granted. Like, don't feel ashamed to say. But it was doing that work that I realized that there's all of this information that's super relevant to the queer community, that like these specific families need this information, and there's nowhere it's being presented really. So there's books like Breastfeeding Without Birthing about inducing lactation, but it's largely written for a cis hetero audience. There's books like Defining Your Own Success about lactation after reduction surgeries, but it's written for cis women who have had reductions, not for people who have had top surgery. So like, while I'm doing this, before I'm even certified, I'm like, this book needs to exist. Also, I've worked in this field for 2 years. I have no business writing this book. But I did like open to Google Doc, and I'm like, what in my ideal world, what would this book look like, right? So I immediately like have this outline, which of course looks nothing like how the book ends up looking. But because I basically said to myself, like, all right, if by the time I am certified, by the time I am qualified to write this book, it still doesn't exist, I'm going to write this book. Because at the time, really the only thing that was out there was Where's the Mother by Trevor McDonald, which is a great book, but it's not a lactation guide. It's a memoir of a trans guy who has given birth and his lactation journey. It's a wonderful book, but it's a memoir. It's not a guide.
It's not helping new parents who are going through that same thing.
Right. It's not giving like practical advice. So
Can we just reflect on the fact? You know what's so funny? Okay. Obviously, there are conservative, like, there are conservative political books, obviously. But really, if we're talking about cultural books, if we're talking about things like stories about people's lives, or stories about like memoirs, or like if we're talking about like more, maybe not fiction, but like a non-fiction kind of like, here's just the reality of like culture in my life, yada yada yada, whatever. The only books that the right produces that I would consider to be cultural books are really bad children's books. They're like really bad Kirk Cameron style children's books, or religious stuff too, I guess. Yeah, well, let's take the religious stuff and put it aside. But like the only type of cultural book that's not a like an overtly Christian book that the right produces are really bad children's books. Just think about this. We are watching a presentation from a man who wrote a book about queer chest feeding in which he's talking about the memoir of a trans man who gave birth, because that trans man felt like their life experience was so valuable enough they had to write it down and turn it into a book. And people might think that's stupid. They're like, the right would look at that and be like, they're a narcissist. And it's like, well, they contributed to the cultural zeitgeist in a way that their ideas are now being presented at socialist events, which is driving culture and trying to normalize this whole idea of trans men giving birth in the first place. And while they're doing that, the right is producing really bad children's books, and that's it.
So, and then when I started pitching this book to publishers, another book.
As a reminder, queer is a positional definition. So why do they even want to breastfeed? Well, provably they have kids. They're writing books and memoirs about having kids. Provably these people have kids. See, I think where you might be stuck is you're still in the mindset that queer activists don't have kids, that people on the left don't have kids. They do have kids. Guess what? They're going to need to feed those kids somehow, so that's why they're interested in the topic. There's nothing in queer ideology that says you can't chest feed your kids.
Had just come out called Feed the Baby by Victoria Ficelli, who I interviewed for this book. She's a gem. So it's disingenuous for me to say this is the only book like this, but like there's 3.
Yeah. And 5,000 for any other person who's not in the queer community.
Right.
Going through this.
Yeah. And even there's a lot of information that wasn't already in a lot of books, but it's like research that had been published, right? But new parents aren't reading the Journal of Human Lactation to find out questions about their hormone treatments, you know? So, right. So
new parents are not, it's so subtle. New parents are not reading the Journal of Lactation to find out information on their hormone treatments. He's saying that those new parents are taking trans hormones at the same time that they are chest feeding their kids. Again, listen.
But it's like research that had been published, right? But new parents aren't reading the Journal of Human Lactation to find out questions about their hormone treatments, you know?
They're not reading the Journal of Human Lactation to find out questions about their hormone treatments. Why are they getting hormone treatments in the first place? Why are they having children? Listen, if I were to ever get pregnant, which God forbid that actually happens, like I don't want to get pregnant. I really don't want to. But if I ever did by accident, I would have to give up drinking. I would have to give up beer for the entire pregnancy. I would have to give up wine. I would have to give up smoking weed. I would have to give up everything that brings me joy in this life when I'm studying the far left. Do you guys really think that I could get through 9 months of bullshit with the far left and being pregnant and not being able to drink and not being able to smoke weed? It would be the worst thing that has ever happened ever. And maybe I would have a little bundle of joy at the end. Okay, fine. But I don't want kids anyway. And you're telling me that trans people can't give up their fucking hormones when they are birthing a child into the world? Come on.
No. So, right. So I am reading the Journal of Human Lactation. I am reading Clinical Lactation, the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine, you know? So yeah,
there would be no happy hour.
So
when did you start writing it, you said?
So, I mean, I started piecing things together, like 7 or 8 years ago, like when I started doing my lactation research and education. I really like sat down writing a book in earnest, probably 4 or 5 years ago after I got certified.
Okay.
And then not to get too like into the weeds about it, but one thing that I learned is that when you're publishing nonfiction, you don't have to have an entire book written, right? Like when you publish a novel, you
True.
need a novel.
Mhm.
When you're publishing nonfiction, you need a sample
Outline.
chapter.
Gotcha.
So I got that contract, and then I had a year to write the book. So then that was February 2022, and then February 2023 they started the printing, right? So there was 2 years from when I signed the contract before the book
Gotcha.
showed up on people's shelves.
So that was like a somewhat different political climate than we currently are in.
Yes.
So, especially given the Supreme Court decision yesterday, what does it feel like to be on a book tour supporting families in these communities, given the political climate where people are actively fighting to take away rights of this community?
So you sent me this question ahead of time, and I've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
And the initial thought that I had was that I'm not the kind of person who like chuck a Molotov cocktail, right?
Yeah.
But like this book
Kind of.
is my Molotov cocktail.
What?
That wasn't the plan going into it.
Wow.
I mean, you know, it's not like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, everything was hunky dory
Correct.
in the queer community.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do feel like, I mean, it definitely feels more important that I talk about it, that I do
Mhm.
speak about it. Yeah, I'm doing as many interviews, as many talks, as many
Mhm.
podcasts as I can, because still, like, I talk to people ahead of time for podcasts. A couple days ago, I had a conversation with somebody who wants to interview me, and as we're talking, they're like, wait, trans women can induce lactation? And I'm like, yeah. And people don't know.
What?
I still have people talk to me and they're like, I had a hysterectomy. Can I induce lactation?
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, having uterus has literally nothing to
Mhm.
do with it. And it's information.
Is this guy teaching men who have become trans women to lactate? Am I hearing that correctly? Is this guy actually teaching, like, he's saying trans women, so these are biological men who have become women who can't give birth. They didn't give birth. They're biological men. And he's inducing lactation in the trans women to make them feel as though they gave birth so they can chest feed the baby that they didn't give birth to. Do I have this right? I'm sorry, what?
Conversation with somebody who wants to interview me. And as we're talking, they're like, wait, trans women can induce lactation? And I'm like, yeah. And people don't know. I still have people talk to me and they're like, I had a hysterectomy. Can I induce lactation?
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, having uterus has literally nothing to
Mhm.
do with it.
Bro.
And it's information that people need, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. Indeed. Truer words have never been spoken. You don't know what you don't know. Did New York elect a socialist mayor? They're about to. I don't know why are people surprised about this? That Democratic Socialist guy has been running in New York for a while. He's been progressively climbing in the polls for months. I don't know why people are surprised that New York is literally about to elect a socialist mayor. But hey guys, remember, woke is dead. Woke is dead. Donald Trump won. New York City is about to have a socialist mayor, a legitimate socialist. But remember, guys, Trump won. Woke is dead.
Basically, anyone, no matter what their anatomy, can induce lactation. At least the beginning part of it. They may face barriers because of other things with their body or hormones that they're taking, but it doesn't necessarily, the barrier isn't something physically having a uterus.
Well, whoever wins the primary is going to win the election. It's like the thing.
Or not in order to.
Yeah, generally, okay. So generally speaking, any adult person who is, like any healthy adult person can induce lactation. There's definitely differences in like, if you would need to take hormones ahead of time, like how much tissue you have to begin with. Like if I wanted to, I would definitely need to take estrogen for a long time, a lot ahead of time. The only real
twisted. This is so fucking twisted though. Okay, I guess people in the chat are surprised I didn't know about this. I guess it's one of those things where like I did know about this, but I've never actually heard someone talk about it like this. So it's like technically I know a lot of crazy stuff exists, but there's a difference between knowing something maybe is happening in some far off corner of the world and actually seeing a presentation about it. I cannot believe we're watching a presentation about how do we get trans women to lactate to make them feel like they're chest feeding a baby that they didn't give birth to.
Induced lactation. There's definitely differences in like, if you would need to take hormones ahead of time, like how much tissue you have to begin with. Like if I wanted to, I would definitely need to take estrogen for a long time, a lot ahead of time. The only real like 100% deal breakers are if you have any sort of problem with your pituitary gland, which is not subtle. If you have a problem with your pituitary gland, you know that. And people who have had their nipples removed. Okay. But yeah, and even if you've had top surgery and you had your nipples regrafted, you would definitely lactate if you gave birth, right? Because your body doesn't know that you've had top surgery.
I bet it knows.
Or that part of your body doesn't know. Yeah. Doesn't know that you've had top surgery. But inducing lactation would definitely be a much more of a process, but there's not a lot of overlap in the communities of people who have had top surgery and people who want to induce lactation.
Gotcha. So, because maybe some of these people don't know what inducing lactation is, and have not read your book yet. Do you want to discuss a little bit about what inducing lactation is for someone who might not know?
Yeah, absolutely. It is, so short story is kind of, it's exactly what it sounds like, right? You are tricking your body into thinking you're pregnant and that you now have a hungry baby. And the kind of like the short version of how to do it that we generally recommend to people is you take birth control pills, skipping the placebo week for a couple of months, doesn't have to be the full 9 months, just to slow down your cycle. And then the day you stop taking them, you start pumping like crazy to convince your body that you now have a hungry baby.
Okay.
And there are, it is extremely one of those things where it's like your mileage may vary, right? And that's one of the tricky parts too when you're talking to people about inducing lactation is there's
why
like no way to predict how well or how quickly you're going to produce milk.
Why are they doing this? Okay, I'm not an expert in birthing related things in any stretch of the imagination, but I do have some recollection that at some point I learned that the milk that a mother's body produces is made for the baby that they just gave birth to. Am I making that up? Like there's something very specific about like the milk of the mother of the child being for the child that the mother just had. Maybe I'm making that up, but I feel like I learned that somewhere sometime. And so why in the ever loving fuck are we depriving a baby of the thing that is literally made for them via the actual birthing person to placate a biological man to get him to lactate, to then feed the newborn baby milk that was not made for the newborn baby, that is simply a selfish, ego-driven exercise to make the trans woman, who is a biological man, feel like they are the mother of the child when they are not. This just seems to be, like, you want to talk about, like, this is extraordinarily selfish. It's like there is a reason that the baby is drinking the milk from the mother and not from the fucking wet nurse down the street or whatever the fuck. Like, why are you making the baby drink milk that was produced as part of an ego-driven exercise to make someone feel like they're a biological woman when they are not? Why are you visiting that on the child? See, this is why I don't want to have kids, because quite frankly, I'm a really fucking selfish person. I am extremely selfish. I am extremely self-focused. There are things that I don't want to give up in order to rear children. And so I have made the responsible choice that I'm just not going to have kids because I don't want them and I don't want to give up certain things. And it's kind of like, if you're a trans person, okay, fine, I guess whatever. But why are you forcing your mental health problems onto a child in the form of what you are feeding them? We're not even talking like you're dressing them and like, we're not even talking about having a baby or having they them pronouns or dressing the child in weird non-binary clothes, which would be bad enough and which does happen. We've talked about babies on this channel before. Why are you doing this? It makes no sense. These people are fucking crazy. And by the way, for people in the chat who think that this is the craziest thing I've ever seen, it is not the craziest thing I've ever seen. And I promise you, you have not seen anything that is crazier than what I have seen in the queer Marxist world. You just haven't. But this is still pretty messed up to listen to.
Much milk you're going to produce. Some people, there's a million factors, right? Like some people start producing tons of milk right away. Some people pump for weeks, and it usually we tell people like 6 to 8 weeks. Some people pump for like 12 weeks and are producing drops of milk. And it's extremely difficult to tell how it's going to work for you. Now, if you have experienced lactating in the past, then the process is technically something different that is called relactation. And a lot of times I talk to people about that. Like people will talk to me that, they breastfed their baby for, however long, and that was 3 years ago. And sometimes they still leak when they hear a crying baby or when they're having sex or something. And I'm like, For
people who think this is the craziest thing I've ever heard, you perhaps was not around when we did BDSM Jesus, which actually did happen. You can look it up on my Substack, look up queer theology. We watched a whole presentation about BDSM polyamorous relationships with Jesus. I swear to God. There was what was it? It was a gangbang with Jesus in the church basement or something like that. It was messed up. Anyway.
If you started pumping regularly, you would probably just start producing milk. If you're leaking, you're still like technically producing some amount of milk. So just start pumping and see how it goes.
It's so funny because most of what you're saying, so I am a certified lactation counselor, which is a step below an international board certified lactation counselor. So not as much of the medical clinical training that you've had, but so much of what you're saying is paralleling what I would tell anyone who's going to lactate, is that there's so many factors, it's nuanced per person. Like, you know, there's so many factors to consider: your tissue, what your body is doing, what happened to you if you were the birthing person, your medical history, so many things. But I think there's such a gap between professionals using the same philosophy that they're using with a cis heterosexual couple, and the queer and transgendered couple. So like, what can we do as lactation consultants to become more inclusive and like using more language or education and trainings and things to kind of match that? Because it seems so interesting that everything you're saying really does parallel what is our job already. But
yeah, that's the thing, is it's the same but different, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you've got two women, one of whom is giving birth, and then her wife wants to induce lactation, right? That's no different from a cis hetero couple who's.
If you've got two women and one of them is giving birth and her wife wants to induce lactation, which means the other one. So what you really have is a woman and a man who has decided he's a woman, probably because he has a sexual fetish. And those two people have had a kid, and the birthing person gives up the child to the non-birthing person who wants to induce lactation to make it feel like they're a real woman too.
It's the same but different, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mm.
if you've got two women, one of whom is giving birth, and then her wife wants to induce lactation, right? That's no different from a cis hetero couple who's adopting a baby who wants to induce lactation, right? The end result is the same, or somebody who has a surrogate who wants to induce lactation.
It's just no
and so
different.
it's really just a question of, right, just a question of language and culture and that sort of thing. So there are specific trainings that are available. So like I said, there's my book, there's Feed the Baby by Victoria Ficelli. There's a few other books on birth support for queer families. There's one specifically called Supporting Queer Birth by AJ Silver that I highly recommend. But then there's online trainings. One that I really like is from the BADT, Birthing Advocacy Doula Training.
Okay.
I believe is the, yes, Birthing Advocacy Doula Training. There's another company called Lactation Education Resources that I did a webinar for on how to be more gender inclusive in your clinical space. But what a lot of it boils down to is, so aside from like the things you would do in a clinic specifically, right? Like to show allyship, but like personally, read books, do trainings about supporting queer families. And this is what I always tell people when I'm doing this talk at conferences is, whatever you're interested in, wherever you live, there is a queer history to where you live. And if you live in a city, there's a book about that, I 100% promise you. And any other interest you have, there's a queer history to it. And there's a book about it. Okay. I promise you.
Firestorm about Asheville.
There are, that's the thing. So, a lot of lactation people that I'm talking to, it is a very 99% of my colleagues are cis women. so there's a lot of overlap in interests, right? So like fashion, like, yes, there's a million queer interest, you know, queer, there's so much queer history about that. Literature, you know, there's so much queer history about that. But then even things like right now, gaming is super popular, right? Like everybody's into Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
Oh,
there's
yeah?
a queer history to
Dungeons and Dragons?
There's a
Really?
queer like there are queer stories in the automotive industry, and there's movies about it, and there's books about it. So yeah, whatever interest you have, learn the queer history of that interest.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. I have a friend who just started the Gamers
Nice.
gaming. So
Nice.
I was like, oh, that's good. So when we're talking about having time to pump, you're talking about pumping.
Yeah.
And so with any of this, especially with anyone who is inducing lactation, or maybe a couple who are both trying to lactate or have come from top surgery, which you mentioned that most of those things are going to come with a lot of extra support needed for lactation, both physically with like, I know you mentioned a lot how your support is mostly virtual, so you don't necessarily have to help a starving baby who is having a problem latching. You are helping in the process beforehand for the person.
Yeah. I do a lot of information seeking.
So do you find that your job really also involves counseling and kind of supporting through the way as things change, because it's their plans may change more and stuff, so your job is knowledge and lactation as well as like counseling?
Yeah, so with inducing lactation, one of the things that I talk about in the book, but I talk about a lot in general, is the need to discuss expectations and goals, right? And especially with inducing lactation, but really with lactation across the board, is how do you expect this is going to go? Like, what are your plans, and what are you going to do if those plans aren't coming to fruition, right? Because especially on the subject of inducing lactation, there's not a lot of a way to tell how it's going to go. So if you are 8 to 10 weeks in pumping consistently and you're still not producing a lot of milk, if your initial plan was, I'm going to provide 100% of the baby's calories, then we have to have a conversation about like, okay, producing 100% of the baby's calories probably is not on the table. Do we want to talk about formula? Do we want to talk about donor milk? What is plan B?
So you mentioned donor milk. Do you find most of your clients use that if they need to supplement lactation in some other way?
I feel like donor milk is often, like what people would prefer to do, right? People would almost always prefer to give their baby human milk, even if it's not coming from them, which is, by the way, like a wonderful thing to do. I'm 100% team donor milk. The trick with it is, access. Like, do you live in a place where you can get it
Safely?
Right. Because, if you have friends or family who are lactating, or people who have a stash of milk they didn't end up using, which happens a lot, then that's great. But then you've also, some people are in a position where they want human milk, but they don't necessarily know the people from whom it's coming, and then it becomes a very personal thing. Like okay, like, it's a friend of a friend. How much, how comfortable am I with that if it's somebody I don't actually know? But then, if it's like your best friend and they say that this person's cool, then so it just becomes this very personal thing. And then there are a lot of organizations too that do milk banking.
Mhm.
So there are milk banks that are, what is the big one? Human Milk Bank Association of North America collects donor milk. They almost exclusively give their milk to neonatal ICUs. And every once in a while will have milk that they can give to the community. But there are a lot of local organizations, Eats on Feets, Human Milk for Human Babies, that are, they have like local chapters.
And they're more regulated than just like you go to Facebook and say,
Yeah,
who's
and-
got milk for me?
Yeah, and I don't even know if regulation is the right word, but they at least have like a reputation they're trying to maintain than just Facebook rando.
Yeah, I do know one of the regulations, you're not allowed to buy it. That's the one big thing, is no purchasing of milk
Yeah.
in any of the groups. But have you ever found that anyone is unwilling to share donor milk because they know it is going to go to a queer or trans family?
That has never come across my radar, but like I'm 100% sure that happens.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it has never come across my radar that somebody has been refused milk because they're queer.
Yeah, and I do think there's probably some people who would happily induce lactation or relactate if it was a friend that they were trying to help who was in the queer community, that they could knowingly provide milk for their baby.
Yeah.
So there's other people out there doing that.
Wait.
So I wanted to talk a little bit.
So not only are they doing this thing where they're like having the trans women induce lactation to have milk for the babies, but they're also roping their friends into it and saying, can you induce lactation in yourself as well? The whole thing just seems so selfish to me, honestly.
We're here in Western North Carolina. So during all of that, I actually was working with infant and young child feeding during emergency.
That's like one of the things about queer activists. And I noticed this, I really noticed this when we went to the Boston like queer pride thing a couple weeks ago, because I was in these giant crowds of queer people for like 2 straight days, and even Victor noticed this. And so like if my husband noticed this, like, and I noticed the same thing at the same time, we had a whole conversation about it, which is like, these people are so fucking selfish. They really are. And I say that as, again, I am a very, very selfish person. I will put myself ahead of like everyone else and not have an issue with it. But the thing of it is like, when I'm around people, I do actually try to be of service to people, because I know that for me, I'm going to be most successful when I am serving other people, when I'm trying to help other people, provide value to other people in a certain way. I do try to be mindful when I'm around people, like what I'm doing, where I'm walking, how I'm speaking, like all this stuff. Like, so I can be a very self-focused person, and I'm not nearly as selfish as some of these queer people. They are almost entirely self-focused on everything at all times, to the detriment of being able to see even what's going on around them. And one of the things I noticed when I was in like the queer pride parade, like the audience for it, was that people were just running into each other all the time. You couldn't walk through the crowd because people were so focused on themselves and the conversations they were having with their partner, and they all had their hands all over each other all the time. They were all gripping onto each other and looking longingly into each other's eyes as they were trying to walk down a crowded street. And they had no self-awareness of anything else that was going on around them at all. And so I got hit in the head with umbrellas because people weren't paying attention. Someone like kicked me like because they weren't paying attention and they walked right into me. I got hit in the head with something else. What else did I get hit in the head with? Oh, a flagpole. Someone fucking hit me in the head with a flagpole, again, just because they weren't paying attention. And one of the times it was like the guy who hit me in the head with the umbrella, he immediately jumped in. He was like, oh, that's not my fault. It's like, yes, asshole. Actually, it is. Actually, it is. It is your umbrella that just hit me in the head because you weren't watching where you were going, because you were so self-focused on, oh my God, honey, oh, we're so here and we're so queer and we're so proud, and like stroking each other. And look, it's like, it was just like, it was so maddening at some point because there were giant crowds in this place. and everything, like, you couldn't get anywhere because like they kept just like people would just stop literally in the middle of the sidewalk just to have a conversation with their friends. So what would happen is like there's a group of people who are like walking and they're in the middle of the fucking sidewalk or they're in the middle of the path or the walkway. And then they would just stop in the middle of the walkway and form a giant circle so no one could get around them. And we're on really crowded streets at this point. And they would just start having a conversation in amongst themselves with no self-awareness that they're in the middle of a fucking sidewalk. It's like little shit like that just happened over and over and over again. And then I hear about this stuff with kids and I'm like, man, you people, I am an incredibly selfish person, and this is way too much for me. Hang on, I got a super chat that just came in. Guy mansplaining lactation. Yeah, isn't it funny? This is a guy mansplaining lactation. Well, no, I've been in mosh pits many, many times. Mosh pits were actually a better place to be than what I experienced at the Pride Parade in Boston. The crowd is much, I mean, mosh pits, you're having fun and like whatever, but people also kind of look out for each other in mosh pits, I found. Ain't no one looking out for you at the Queer Pride Parade.
There was a team established, Safe Infant Feeding. So we were really focused on keeping babies safe. So we dealt a lot with what happens after a devastating hurricane and how babies are kept safe. So there's a lot of barriers to that when you don't have access to water or heat. But then in the queer and trans community, obviously there's even more if they're dealing with a natural disaster. Do you have any tips or tricks that you could give for someone who might be trying to prepare for a potential upcoming natural disaster and like know that they will need lactation support or feeding support of some way for their baby during that?
Yeah, so lactation support during disasters is like this whole other specialty.
For sure.
That they do trainings for, and is, I can't speak too much about it because it is very much out of my wheelhouse, right? It's this whole other field. But one thing that I do think is important that people don't necessarily consider is that powdered formula isn't good if you don't have access to potable water.
Correct.
So if you're going to stockpile formula, you need pre-mixed,
ready to feed formula.
Yes, ready to feed formula. That's the phrase. And then also, but aside from that, it's like, you know, like chargers and like things to keep your pump going. You can get manual hand pumps, which, you know, are wildly unpopular because they're a pain to use. But you know, have one stashed with your emergency supply kit, because it's the kind of thing that like, it's a hunk of plastic, it has a shelf life of forever. And if you do, you know, you buy it and you never use
real.
it.
Actually, unironically real. I'm describing queers taking up space, which to them apparently means just being completely unaware of anyone else around you at all.
Like, it's better to have it and better to have it and not need it.
And the hand pumps aren't super expensive,
right?
In the pump world,
right.
Yeah. My question just went out of my head on that one. I'll go to another one. So, let's see. Okay. So, supporting families after they, or when they're going through any of these journeys. So, obviously, the U.S. is not very like maternal, paternal, parental leave focused. They don't really value that. So, most people are getting very little time off with a new baby of any kind, much less a safe place at work to pump and do all that, even though there is legislation technically in place that is supposed to do that. Is there anything for someone who is, you know, inducing lactation or is lactating to support their non-gestational baby, and families dealing with that? Because obviously if you are inducing lactation, you're doing it quite frequently. Like it's not twice a day. It's not, you know, just on your lunch break. So is there anything in place to kind of help, or is there anywhere that you could direct someone who's going through that journey?
So the thing about the Pump Act is that it provides or it specifies, that there should be a space for pumping, like a safe enclosed space for pumping for a year after the birth of the child. So for people inducing lactation, no.
There's no child.
Right. Right. It's totally up to your employer how they're gonna do that.
Now they want the employer to provide a private space for the trans woman to induce lactation, even though they didn't give birth to a child. That's like going to your employer and saying, I have this sexual fetish. Can you provide me with a private space where several times a day I get to take care of my sexual fetish? And there's no reason for it other than I'm just a really selfish fucking person and I just want to. And you have to provide me with that because this is who I am.
One of the things that came to mind when I read that question was about a year or so ago now, a friend of mine was in charge at his job. He was in charge of putting together like a lactation room, which, first of all, so then he calls me because he knows, right, I just wrote a book about lactation, and I'm like, we are two cis guys who are the ones in charge of this lactation room. Super.
Yeah.
Yeah, a private space for pumping. Exactly.
One of the things he asked me about, because he knows nothing about it, right? Like he's just in a management position, and somebody basically gave him a pile of money and was like, we need you to make a lactation room.
We got to fit this pump back.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that he asked me though was, when I get pushback on this and people are like, why can't you just pump in the bathroom? Like, what is the answer I can give people that is not basic human dignity, right? And I was like, you're making food.
Yeah.
Like that's why.
Yeah.
Because you're making food, you can't do it in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And he was like,
you're not supposed to be making food. You are a man, sir. You are a man. It is not your biological role to make food for a newborn child through fulfilling some crazy sexual fetish that you have. You are a man, sir.
genius.
Yes.
Because that's
Nor
in
should you have to
theory,
do it in your car,
right?
Nor should you have to do it in a tiny closet.
but especially not a bathroom.
Especially not a bathroom, yes.
Yeah, and then the sideline, I think that didn't even end up being a lactation room. I think it's officially a wellness room. Oh, because that was the other thing, is they wanted it to be multi-use. And I was like, the room where people are going to pump cannot be the room where you go when you're having a panic attack, because pumping happens on a schedule, right? People need to be able to lock that door.
Yeah.
It can't also be the panic attack room.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. So do you think in those
all right, no,
instances,
step
it's
on
just
step.
really going to
Thank you.
depend on the person's job and what field they're in and how willing their bosses are to kind of support their journey?
Yeah. It's really just up to your boss whether or not you can pump.
Yeah. It's really sad because not everyone has great bosses. So
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what other. So speaking of pumps, there are lots. There are electric pumps. There are hand pumps, like you mentioned. Do you have a specific pump you normally recommend to people, or a specific type of pump that you normally recommend to people? Because it is, they're going to use it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
they're going to spend a lot of time with it.
Mhm.
And like, what would you say is like most important when they're starting that journey of kind of figuring out the pump?
Okay, so here's the thing that people don't know until it becomes relevant to their life. Breast pump technology has gotten crazy in the last
Oh my
couple
God,
of
there's
years.
so many.
Yeah,
So
there's so many, and they're so good, and they're so small.
Mm-hmm.
There's this one that it's the one that I kind of keep for like demo purposes. It's called a minuet. It's made by Unimom. It is the size of a hockey puck and is just as good as like the briefcase ones that hospitals have.
Nice.
Yeah, it is nuts how good pumps have gotten the last couple of years. However, the thing that people don't know about pumps is that this word gets used a lot.
Well, Bob, no, that's not correct, Bob. It is not just a clip from my live stream, Bob. If you detoured into it on YouTube, you will find the link on the Substack, and you can find the full open letter there. So no, we don't script things here. We are not leftists. I don't know why you say it's unfortunately just a clip from my live stream, which is just factually untrue. There was a whole link there, Bob. Did you find it? Just saying. But if he doesn't watch it, and here's the thing, Bob. Here's the thing. If Bret Weinstein doesn't watch it because it's a clip from my live stream, then fuck him. Because that's not intellectually honest. Maybe, Bob, maybe you're the one that's not being intellectually honest. I don't know. But if Bret Weinstein completely rejects the mountain of primary source evidence because he doesn't like that it's a clip from a live stream, Bob, does that seem like an intellectually honest thing to you? I would actually like you to answer this question. If Bret Weinstein rejects a mountain of primary source evidence that is not available to him anywhere else because he doesn't like that it's an unscripted clip from a live stream, and let's pray, Bob, that he's smarter than you and he finds the link with the evidence, because I've linked it everywhere too. But let's put that aside for a second. Do you think, Bob, that is an intellectually honest thing to do? A yes or no in the chat would be just great. We're stopping the entire live stream just for you. Do you think it's intellectually honest to reject a mountain of primary source evidence because you don't like that something is an unscripted clip from a live stream? No. Bob, this is a yes or no answer. You're not listening. You've already overlooked something once. I would hate for you not to be listening and to get permanently banned from my channel because your feelings are getting hurt and you're not listening. The format isn't compelling. Bob, do you want me to make it into a 20-second clip? Is your attention span not long? Is your attention span not well enough that you can actually watch a full discussion of something? Is that the issue? Do you really think that Bret Weinstein, who is an evolutionary biology PhD and a college professor, do you think that he needs me to cut something into something that looks like it was out of a reality TV show? Would that be more to your intellectual level, Bob? So you still haven't answered my question, and I'm still waiting for the answer. Do you believe it would be intellectually honest? No, exactly. Exactly. It wouldn't be intellectually honest. So maybe, Bob, you need something cut down to the lowest common denominator. Maybe that's just your IQ level. I would suggest that you're probably not going to last long on this channel if that is the IQ level that you're at. But what you don't seem to understand, probably because your IQ is not very high, is that I don't actually really care if Bret Weinstein accepts this offer or not. The test is not whether or not Bret Weinstein takes the time to actually listen to someone have an intelligent conversation on the internet. That's not the test. The test is he being intellectually honest? That is the only test that matters. That is the only test that I care about. So if Bret Weinstein just thinks, wow, a clip from a live stream, that's just, I don't know, maybe she does have all this evidence, but maybe she posted a clip from a live stream, and that's just not good enough for the amazing Bret Weinstein. If he does that, he's not being intellectually honest, which you've already admitted. And Bob, since you don't make any content on the internet at all, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to reject your advice. Please let me know when you build a YouTube channel to over 100,000 followers. Please let me know when you're educating hundreds of thousands of people a month about the far left. Please let me know when you are entirely self-funded because of your content. No, Bob, you need to put your feelings back in the fucking bottle. Please let me know when you do any of those things. And when you have achieved those things, then you will be in a position to give me advice. But I just want to be very, very clear that I'm not accepting advice from people on how to format my content. Thank you.
A lot, which is hospital grade.
Mhm.
You don't need a hospital grade pump, because what that means
Thanks,
is that
Fat
that
Cat.
pump is good enough to be used by multiple people in a day. So like, even if you're inducing lactation and you're pumping 20 minutes 8 times a day, that's a couple hours a day. But like, hospital grade pumps are like 24/7, right? They're going from
Yeah.
one, which also, that sounds like weird and it's
Yeah.
not. There are very specific parts
They're
of the
not used-
pump
yes,
that are
just the one part
reusable
is
and
being-
parts that
Yeah.
are
Just the one part of the pump is going
Yes,
from room to
there's
room.
the pump kit that
Yeah.
is owned by a person, and then the machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I start talking about lactation stuff, and I don't know what people know and
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I can see how if you didn't know a lot, that would sound sketchy as
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
But yeah, you don't need a hospital grade pump. You do need a pump that is you don't need, so, and then we come to what are called multi-user pumps, which is again pretty much every pump now. There are very specific parts that the milk never touches, that it's fine to get passed from person to person. Another thing that's worth noting is that lately, in like the last couple of years, insurance companies have gotten very cool about inducing lactation. Used to
I
be,
didn't know that.
you give birth, you get sent the insurance pump, the pump from your insurance company, which is fine. You know, it's not the best pump, it's not the worst pump, it's fine.
I swear I'm not going to spend any more time bitching about this, but the fact that there was an honest comment in my chat saying, we need to make it really easy for PhD college professors to watch content, and a clip from a live stream just is not simple enough for them. It's like, the mentality of conservatives is that everything needs to be edited into a form of entertain. This is literally idiocracy. Do you guys understand this? This is literally fucking idiocracy. It is idiocracy to have the perspective that you can't have intellectual conversations and an exchange of ideas. That's way too complicated and way too much to get the attention of a PhD in biology college professor. What I need to do is instead edit a clip down with jump cuts and graphics and make it be no more than 3 minutes, because they're not going to watch any more than 3 minutes, and probably have some like interlude in like music or something like that, really to get their attention. We need to cut it basically into a fucking reality TV show, like an episode of Bad Girls Club or something like that, like some really fucking cheesy reality TV show. And it's like, man, this is the level at which conservatives want their influencers. Idiocracy. This is it's professional wrestling. And there's a time and a place for professional wrestling, but it's like, do you think I want to have an intellectual conversation with professional wrestlers? No. I don't. No. Doing the work isn't always fun or engaging. Exactly. Exactly. Bad Girls Club is just like the worst reality TV show that I can think of. It's like the most trailer park trash reality TV show of all time. Anyway.
It'll get you to where you're going, which is, for most people, pumping a few times a day for, 6 months or a year. However, if you're inducing lactation, a lot of the companies now, you can, call up Aetna or whoever, tell them you're inducing lactation and you need a pump. As I'm given to understand that more often than not, they'll just send you one.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah.
I think there were a lot of people like making a big fuss about it, that they're
Gotcha.
just like, just send them the pump.
Yeah.
So we're tired of having this argument.
Yeah. So for someone who is maybe in the queer and trans community is thinking about things, what is a good resource for them to maybe try to find someone who is an IBCLC, who has knowledge in their background? Is there a way for them to, you can go and find any IBCLC that works in your town, but that doesn't necessarily tell you if there's someone who's going to be knowledgeable in their specific space, might know specifically about induced lactation or the nuance between someone who's had top surgery or not, and when the top surgery happened, I think is also a big factor in stuff like that. So is there a way for someone who might be in the community to find a queer or trans friendly?
What does his shirt say? Show up. I think it's show up something out, and it's got a fist and a triangle.
IBCLC.
So
show up, show
as
out.
far as
That's
I know,
what I
there's
thought.
not like a network.
Mm-hmm.
There is, and this is one of those things where I say, which with much chagrin, that like Facebook is super helpful.
Yeah.
In like, because you might have queer friends who have had lactation consultants in the past that you just don't know about, because you're not, you don't have kids, you've not heard them talking about lactation problems, but like you might have queer friends who know the good queer lactation consultant. So just, like ask people, but then ask in the social media community, like who's good and who's not good.
By the way, I wanted to tell you guys, when I was at the Boston Pride Parade, I saw multiple ACT UP t-shirts. I saw multiple upside down pink triangles. Someone actually had a sign. I think I have a picture of it. Someone actually had the silence equals death pink triangle sign like in the parade. I was like, wow. It was so on the nose.
Thinks they're an ally, but is not an ally.
Yeah, which is super important.
Yeah.
And you mentioned most of your job, a lot of your job is doing it virtually. So they're not necessarily stuck in their one little area of support for that, because you can support induced lactation for someone without being in person.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we learned about during the pandemic when we started
one of the
doing
benefits
telehealth.
of the pandemic.
What's that?
One of the benefits of the pandemic was that we could do this.
Right. Well, and we learned.
Should we watch the ACT UP documentary again for new people? I know we watched it recently, but I kind of feel like maybe we should watch it again.
And like the lactation
like
professional community
second viewing
basically learned that 75% of our job can be telehealth.
And the Queer Core documentary.
Unless there is a specific problem with a baby's oral anatomy.
You know what we should really do? We should do a double feature with the ACT UP documentary and the Queer Core documentary, because those two movements were happening at the same time. And I actually think it would be interesting to watch both of those movements kind of develop side by side with each other. And if we're watching both documentaries back to back, that could be an interesting experience.
Or a parent is having like some sort of problem with their tissue, there's really like no reason to be in person. And even like parents who have like mastitis or like engorgement, if it's not too bad,
which is a breast infection, in case you don't know what mastitis is.
Oh yes, yeah,
or an infection in the chest, in the
tissue.
tissue.
Unless there's some sort of like major problem, we can do a lot of lactation support telehealth, and especially if it is preemptive, right? Then yeah, then you don't even necessarily need a local lactation consultant. You can call up somebody like me, like Victoria Ficelli.
Literally only retards who don't listen to the left think that anyone is hateful towards Jews or loyal to Islam. That's a conservative bullshit talking point. It's not correct or accurate at all. They do not hate Jews. They hate the settler colonists that are Israel. It has nothing to do with them being Jewish. It has to do with them being settler colonists. They believe the same thing about Americans. Americans are the settler colonists. They do not love Islam. They believe that the Palestinians are in a decolonization uprising against the settler colonists. Has nothing to do with Islam, nothing. So these are conservative bullshit talking points because conservatives have been brainwashed by Zionist media to hate Muslims and to hate Islam. And so you look at it in terms of that, but the left doesn't even talk about Islam. They don't talk about Muslims. They don't talk about Jewish nothing. They talk about the settler colonists and the oppressed indigenous people.
As
Yeah,
well
of course
as
he is.
others
Of
in the
course he is.
community. And we can answer the initial questions you have, but B, like, I might know a good lactation consultant, right? Like, there's a few of us who are specializing in queer support, and we all know each other.
Yeah.
Right? So if you live in Edison, New Jersey, I got a lactation consultant for you.
Right. Well, so in that regard,
I'm sorry,
is
but
there
things
someone
that
who
didn't
is
happen.
in, like,
I don't
a,
believe you at all in
lactation
any way.
adjacent field, doula work, the medical field, something like that, and they are in the queer and trans community and they want to become an IBCLC so that they can then go and support their community? What's the best way for them to get started doing that lactation work?
Okay, so I would definitely say this kind of goes back to our earlier conversation that step one is find out where you can get your clinical hours. Because for a lot of people, that's the hard part.
That's the biggest hurdle. Yeah.
If you
Can we please not? Can we please not get into conservative retardation? Do you want me to show you literal Queers for Palestine pamphlets written by Palestinian queer people? Because I can. You guys think that these people don't exist because you listen to conservative bullshit artists who lie to you. So can you please stop with the Queers for Palestine is like chickens for KFC. It's retarded. It has nothing to do with what the left actually believes. So, no. Can we? I don't care. I don't care. Do you know how many times I've heard that joke in the past 2 years? Do you know it? Do you really think you're the first person to come on my channel and say that joke? Do you understand? Hey, Rich, do you understand what Queers for Palestine actually means? Pop quiz for Rich, only for Rich. Do you understand what Queers for Palestine means? Let us know in the chat. You want to make jokes? You want to make jokes about something I've been talking about for years? When you guys are running around the internet going, it's chickens for KFC. Do you actually want to know? Do you actually know what you're talking about? Or do you just make jokes? Let us know in the chat. What does Queers for Palestine mean? No one else answer this, please. What does Queers for Palestine mean? Hey, bro, until you learn how to spell my name correctly, I ain't looking nothing up. I don't believe you. You didn't even spell my name correctly. It's on the screen right in front of you. What does Queers for Palestine mean? No, not okay. I asked you a question. What does Queers for Palestine mean? We're waiting. Entire stream stopped just for you. No. I asked you. I asked you to define it. Do you know how to define it? Are you going to enlighten us? Because you're just making jokes, right? It's not serious. Doesn't mean anything. You gonna make jokes or are you gonna define it? What it actually means? Or are you going to admit that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about because you spent all your time making jokes and not actually learning what you were talking about. Are you going to define it, or are you going to admit you don't know, or are you going to break down crying in my chat? Pick one. It's fine to make jokes on this channel. What is not fine is when you're pushing, no. Answer the fucking question I'm asking you. You need to listen to me very closely right now. There are two acceptable answers. The first answer is, Karlyn, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Please enlighten me. The second answer is you defining queers for Palestine. I want to hear one of those two things. You don't know. Thank you. This is exactly my point. It is okay to joke on this channel. It is not okay to joke and push conservative bullshit narratives when you don't know what you're talking about. And now we've assessed that you don't know what Queers for Palestine means. Does anyone else in the chat want to take a stab at it? Does anyone else in the chat want to define Queers for Palestine for our friend Rich? Free Palestine from the oppression of Israel, which is seen as a form of capitalism and colonization. Yes. It's solidarity with shared struggle of those oppressed under capitalism. That's what that means. Anyone else have a definition they want to throw out there? It means communist for Palestine. Yes, it does. Nope, Bob, you don't know what you're talking about either. Wrong. Completely incorrect. This is also wrong. This is also completely wrong. This is a conservative bullshit narrative. I'm sorry. Queers for Palestine means standing in solidarity against the capitalist oppressors, Israel, who privatized the land. Exactly. Well, if you knew that, Rich, then why didn't you define it? You didn't define it because you didn't know, so stop fucking pretending. They believe that Israel are the capitalists, the settler colonists. Settler colonists means capitalists, the people who privatized the land from the indigenous Palestinian people, and that the Palestinian people are the original caretakers of the land. That's what that means. Every other answer in the chat is wrong. Queers for Palestine is a thing because Palestinians are the oppressed indigenous people who had their land stolen by the capitalist settler colonists of Israel. Has nothing to do with Israel being Jewish, has nothing to do with Palestinians being Muslim. It is an oppressor versus oppressed narrative. Israel are the capitalists that took the land and privatized it. The Palestinians are in a decolonization effort to rise up against their capitalist oppressors. You don't get to fucking agree with me. I am telling you what it means. You don't know. Do you really think I care about your opinion? We have already established that you don't know. Rich, now is a time for you to shut your fucking mouth and listen. Now is a time for you to listen and to learn. You didn't know what you were talking about. You were making jokes. We are now taking the time to teach you something, and you're still not fucking listening. And do you know how I know you're not listening? Because you're continuing to chat in saying, oh yeah, I knew this all along. No, you didn't. Shut the fuck up. People think I'm being mean because sometimes you assholes need to get hit in the fucking head because you won't stop fucking talking. So now you know that the Palestinians are in an uprising, against the settler colonist capitalist oppressors. Queer people are trying to abolish capitalism. Queer people are against normativity, which means the norms that uphold capitalism. They are trying to abolish capitalism by abolishing gender and the nuclear family. The Palestinians are in a struggle against the capitalist Israel. Queer people are in a similar struggle against the capitalist normativity. The goal of queer liberation is the annihilation of capitalism. That's in the Towards the Queerest Insurrection by the Mary Nardini Gang. They are in the same struggle. They have the same oppressor. That is what Queers for Palestine means. It is always and forever about capitalism. That's it.
You live in a city, then it's going to be hopefully a lot easier. But
And just for reference, it's
Yeah.
like 250 hours, right? Or
Okay.
something. So, and a visit is usually like an hour and a half. So you're seeing a lot of,
it depends.
takes a long time.
It depends on okay, it depends on which pathway you're doing, which is what your history is, right?
Yeah.
So if you're already an RN, then you've already got all the education. I
Yeah.
think you need 1,000 clinical hours, but if you're an RN, you work at a hospital.
Yeah.
So there's
But if you're
so
a
there's that.
doula who doesn't have the clinical,
Right.
or you're
I
a
was
nanny
right.
or something.
Right. When I started doing this, I was a wine and cheese guy.
Okay.
So I did
No,
it's
no, wrong. Plus, queer is beyond traditional gender and sexuality categories. Well, I guess I'm being a little harsh because you did say beyond. But no, queer wants to abolish all categories. They are not beyond it. They want to abolish all categories. So they want to transform the categories. They want to transcend the categories. That's what trans means in queer. It's not that they're beyond it. It's that they want to abolish all categories. The language I use is very, very purposeful. Bro, you're literally just making shit up in my chat, and you're going to have to stop that. We hinge into reality here. We don't do conservative bullshit narrative. I'm sorry.
it's pathway 3, which is like you're coming from
Thanks,
an
no
outside
step.
field.
Mhm.
So I had to do all of the education plus 500 clinical
500,
hours.
okay. And yeah, with one baby, it's usually one visit is 1 hour to 2 hours, right?
Yeah. So with clinical
Yeah.
hours,
So 500 babies, basically,
yeah,
roughly.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, and then it's one of those things where like other work in the lactation clinic, even if you're not seeing a baby specifically, an hour is like 3/4 of a official hour. So so there's a little bit of like an algorithm there to figuring it out. But yeah, so I think 500 is the minimum number of hours you need. But yeah, so the organization that does that, the organization where you get your IBCLC is IBLCE, which is the International Board of Lactation Consultant Examiners. And so through them, you submit an application to begin the process, and then you've got, I think it's 3 years or 5 years to do all the steps. But yeah, step 1 is really find out where you're going to get your clinical hours, because that's the hard part, and then go through IBLCE. And then it's another one of those things where it's get online and start talking to people who did it recently, because one of the big gripes with IBLC is their interface is not user friendly. So it's like how you actually do it is not very easy to figure out from the website. You really need another lactation consultant to walk you through it.
Gotcha. So find someone that you actually want to spend some time with, in the lactation community.
Yes.
And start spending a lot of time with them. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
this is all very complicated.
But then another one of the things that people have to do that there are a lot of questions about is 95 hours of lactation specific education. But there are a lot of organizations that just have that as a package.
I want to get to the Q&A. Like I would like the Q&A.
Worth of webinars you can buy for couple $100 and then just like watch them at your leisure. So that's one of those ones that everybody gets all antsy about, but is actually pretty straightforward. There is definitely a cost barrier to becoming an IBCLC, especially because sometimes lactation consultants not only don't pay their interns, but charge their interns for
Oh.
education. Yeah,
Hmm.
and you don't really get a say in that.
Yeah, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. I want to get to the Q&A. I shouldn't do this,
Call
but
me
I
if
will.
there's something wrong.
Gotcha.
You know, maybe
I don't think anyone here wants to be a lactation consultant is the thing.
let's
So
talk when something changes. But yeah, 45-minute email.
We probably should.
Q&A,
I think that was a
Q&A,
good time. So
Q&A,
we're going to open up to
Q&A.
questions and answers from the audience. Yeah. Okay.
Congratulations. Okay.
I didn't have the support I had from healthcare providers this week, going to my healthcare provider, being like, this is what I'm doing, and being like, never heard of this, I'll look it up, okay, I'll help you, but not anyone that had experience.
Hey, Sebastian, what word is on my screen right now that I'm pointing at in the pink at the top? This is just for you, no one else. What word am I pointing at the top of my screen in pink? No, 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 no. Wrong word. No. Try again. What word am I pointing at the top of my screen? It's not Marxism. There's another word. Come on, Sebastian. What word am I pointing at the top of my screen? Waiting. Waiting, just for Sebastian. Waiting. What word am I pointing at the top of my screen? Really shouldn't be taking this long, by the way. Nope. Okay. Now I think you're a troll, and I'm banning you. Goodbye.
Both from like peers and from NICU nurses, there was a misconception that my milk was somehow not enough. So I wanted to talk about the quality of the milk, but also talk about other harmful misconceptions that people might face.
Okay. So just to repeat, you induced lactation 9 years ago, you said? Okay, so you got a lot of people who were concerned about the quality of the milk you were making because it was an induced lactation, not a lactation that happened directly after. And they thought that your milk was not the right quality of milk for the baby. Okay. Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, no, that's nonsense. Like, is the word that comes to mind. Yeah.
How's the baby today?
Yeah, no, there is no reason to believe that the quality of milk would be like different at all. And you know, and which kind of like brings us to the topic of quality of milk, which is that like any of the milk you're producing like is always going to be like high quality and what your baby needs. There's very little that you can do like with your diet or anything to like affect, like make your milk more or less healthy, right? So that's one thing that I tell parents a lot, that like eating like a super balanced, nutritious diet is not necessarily going to make more nutritious milk than if you can just get yourself to a drive-through and eat some Big Macs. Like, what, keep taking your multivitamin, right? Like that's what I take your prenatal vitamin, because
Drink
those
water.
are the same vitamins you need, and stay hydrated, right? And also, like, if you don't want to drink water, like put a little Crystal Light flavor packet in it, or like you need to be drinking the water, but like making the water taste better is not going to make it any less water. It's still water.
And our human milk is mostly water, as opposed to a lot of other mammals. So water is very, very important to the journey.
Yeah. Now I will sideline here and mention caffeine, which will get into your milk.
Correct.
And if you are going to, you know, if you're a big coffee drinker, like that's fine, but you and it's not enough to like negatively impact your baby, but it might be enough to like make your baby have a little bit of a harder time falling asleep.
Mhm.
So if you do drink a lot of coffee in the morning and then you pump, just like and then like freeze it or something, just label that AM milk. That's morning milk.
That makes sense.
Um,
But nothing to like with someone who's induced lactation.
No,
that the
no,
milk is
that's nonsense.
any no different is no different.
no.
So did they ever test your milk? Okay, it was all assumption. Okay, good for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think I know I saw a lot of people discuss relactation and inducing lactation after the hurricane, which I was mostly shocked that a lot of people actually knew about that.
Yeah.
Because there were so many people who lost their whole stashes when the power went out. So people who were ready to feed their baby for however long after the hurricane, and then they lost their whole stash. And there were other people who were like, I'll do this, I'll try. And I was like, oh, actually people know about this. Like, good for you for saying that, but also I'm surprised you know about it, but I do think it is becoming somewhat more common for people to know about it than maybe 9 years ago.
Yeah. And it's, the more we talk about it right now, it's growing exponentially. Now everybody in this room knows about it.
Yeah.
Now there's a real estate guy in Ohio who knows about inducing lactation.
Do you know anything about the history of like this? And you may not, but like the first person to like induce lactation and like things like that. Do you know anything about that kind of history?
So there is a really interesting book that came out a couple of years ago about like the history, like ancient history having to do with lactation. It has the extremely unfortunate name of white blood.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I think
White
like
blood?
a translation thing going on.
Wow.
Yes. But it is an extremely interesting book about, and one of the things that it talks about is, well, a lot about what is that word? Nursemaids.
Oh.
Midwife. No.
The nanny, the granny midwives, or the wet nurses.
Wet nurse.
Wet
There we
nurses.
go. Good Lord. Fell right out of my brain. Wet nursing. Yeah.
Which was super
and
common.
That's like, and that just goes into like prehistory, right? And so, yeah, like in terms of inducing lactation and relactation, like who even knows who the first person was in, ancient Sumeria?
You can start your research for a book for 5 years from now.
So right now I'm pitching a book, kind of a follow-up to this, not about lactation, but about a book about infant care, but again, that is written in a never assumes the gender or sexuality of the reader kind of way, called Baby Wrangling for the Rest of Us.
He's writing a book about babies. He's writing a book about how to raise your best baby.
But
wow,
that is that's a whole other conversation.
Gotcha.
And as we're wrapping this one up, let's not start the new one.
Does anyone else have any questions about anything? Yeah.
This is slightly off topic, but I would just love to hear a little more about the work that you were doing and the books we're contributing to post-Helene.
Oh, yes.
How that came together, how it was organized, how people were connected to it, especially given that the internet was not, Facebook was not there for us.
So also I will point out more. Okay. Yes. So your question is about the Safe and Fit Feeding team that I was part of after the hurricane. So how we kind of got that started, and with the lack of internet, how we were connecting to things. So also Marcel is here, and she was part of that with us. She's an IBCLC as well.
I'll take a look at it.
There are
No
two
step.
lovely
Appreciate it.
IBCLCs in this area who kind of saw a need. One of them works at the Lilac Birth Center. Another one works at Birthstone.
I bet you the Lilac Birth Center is queer.
And they, the day after the hurricane, basically came to town and immediately saw a need to kind of figure out what's going on. And there was a
you
massive
was
influx of
queer.
formula to this area. If anyone went to any distribution site, you saw that there was formula everywhere. So there's nothing with the CDC and FEMA that will help guide you in how to properly store formula, make formula safe if you don't have water, if you don't have electricity. So a bunch of us who were just really passionate about infant and young child feeding were helping go out to distribution centers and meeting with families. We were getting, basically we went to the distribution centers. That's how we did it. And someone said, I'm getting this for so-and-so. And then we were like, do they need lactation help? And we had, I mean, we just had a big meeting. There was,
All right. It kind of seems like I think we've probably gotten all the good bits of this presentation in, and I'm just not doing a lot of commentary on it because this is not a topic that I know a lot about. They're talking about the hurricane now, so I think we can call. I have achieved my maximum amount of like just being pretty disturbed by this entire thing. Again, for people who showed up late, we were watching a presentation from Firestorm Books. Firestorm Books is a radical revolutionary bookstore in Asheville, North Carolina. They actually have a whole bunch of stuff on their YouTube channel. You can see some of their offerings here. We watched their content actually quite a bit. This was a presentation called Chestfeeding for Queer and Trans Parents. They've recently done a one about mutual aid. I do want to do a whole thing about mutual aid. We might do a mutual aid day tomorrow because I feel like mutual aid is something important for us to understand. Stony Baloney actually just sent me another mutual aid presentation earlier today. Antifa's been publishing on mutual aid lately. So tomorrow might be mutual aid day because mutual aid is actually how they fund things. They don't fund via Soros. They don't fund via USAID. These people fund by mutual aid. And so if you actually want to know how socialists and communists are funding things, that's going to be a really good thing to watch. Let me see. Do they have any other new stuff lately? The Revolutionary Life of Martin. I don't know who that is. We watched Emotional Tools for Non-Monogamy. Huh. All right. Well, that's all we have for today. I'm going to go take a little bit of a break. We are doing Disenraged tonight. Disenraged tonight is going to be about one of my favorite meditation teachers ever. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. Disenraged is a spiritual show that I do on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. with my friend Jennifer, where we talk about woo-woo things like meditation and crystals and tarot cards and psychicking and aliens and Bigfoot and all sorts of different things that are of the spiritual woo-woo variety. We will be talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza tonight. We will be attending a Joe Dispenza workshop. I think you guys are really going to like it. I've learned a lot from Joe Dispenza over the years. He's a little cheesy. He's a little cringe. But he's also actually a really good teacher. And actually, a lot of the things that I've learned about teaching people about the left, I learned how to teach from a Joe Dispenza workshop. So we will be doing that a little bit later. I'm going to go take a break. See you guys soon. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer. is influencing my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for the people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.